So here we begin our Advent journey to the manger. I tend to think that Advent, one of the many things that Advent does, is it reteaches us how to hope. I'm going to tell you a story that, again, now that I'm rector, I feel safer telling you. If you look on my transcript from the University of Chicago, where I went to divinity school / seminary, you'll see that I matriculated in the year 2005, and I earned my degree in 2009. That degree takes 3 years. So if you do the math, there's an extra year added on the end of that. Something you might not know about the University of Chicago, or at least back then, is that they had this very dangerous thing called incompletes. If you had a paper to write at the end of your class, which every class just had a paper to write by the time you got to the end of it to earn your grade, if you weren't ready to turn it in, you could just take an incomplete and finish it later and get a grade then. This is poison to perfectionists like me. I started accumulating incompletes like somebody running up their credit card bill, not realizing how credit cards work. So by the time I got to spring of 2008, when I should have graduated, I had about 8 incompletes that I needed to finish, and I didn't. That thing about being a perfectionist, which had served me for so well for so long, all through schooling up to that point, suddenly was sabotaging me. And not only that, I wasn't able to graduate on time with the rest of my class because of it, but also I was not able to get into the PhD program at the University of Chicago as I had planned to do in order to continue my theological studies. And by the way, the Diocese of Chicago had put a moratorium on everybody's ordination process. So all of the goals I had set out for myself, for my life, professionally, suddenly were not possible. I couldn't graduate with my degree, I couldn't get on to the next program, and I couldn't get ordained. And I was running out of money, and I had no place to stay. That was the situation by the end of the summer of 2008. And then, out of the blue, the rector of the church I had interned at as part of my seminary studies called me and said, "We need a full-time communications and administration guy. Would you consider taking the job?" Now, if that kind of story happens to you, you might interpret that in lots of different ways. Some ways that I think might be common are, the meaning you might make of a story like that is things have a tendency to work out, or God watches out for you, or you must have done the right things to set you up for that. I don't take any of those messages away from this story. I think about that experience a lot, that experience of being right on the edge of everything falling apart, and just how sheer dumb lucky I was that it didn't. It makes me think a lot more mysteriously about the need we sometimes have actually for everything to fall apart, for all of our plans to come to a stop, for all of our goals to become impossible. I wonder if you've had experiences like that in your own life. I wonder if you're living in some manifestation of that right now. In the wonderfully upside-down logic of our Christian tradition, We always begin Advent. Indeed, we begin the church year today by contemplating the end, with a capital E, the end of all things. Jesus talks about signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, distress among the nations, the roaring of the sea, people fainting with fear. And it's a source of constant debate and indecision in our tradition about whether Jesus is describing things that have yet to take place, things that are in our future, or is the author of this gospel describing events that already happened, because there are things that happen to the Jewish people that fit these descriptions pretty closely? Or is the whole thing just allegorical, that the big end is just a symbol for all the little ends we experience in life and in history? Who knows? Who knows for sure? And quite frankly, who cares? I have stopped caring. For me, it doesn't really matter if we know precisely what those events are or were or will be, because Jesus' teaching is the same no matter what. When it seems like the world is ending, when it seems like the whole world is ending, or just your little piece of it, Jesus says, don't cower in terror, don't keep your head down, don't run away. Jesus says, stand and raise your head. Stand as if to say, be present, be here, be now, be counted, be visible, be known, be grounded. Raise your head as if to say, look up, look out, look beyond, be ready, and be open. Don't let your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life. That weighing down, right? You can kind of feel that in your body, that kind of weighing down of the dissipation, the despair, the worries of life. That kind of sinking down is contrasted with what he is saying, to stand and raise your head. Jesus is describing what I'll call the posture of hope. Hope is something we first do with our bodies. We stand tall, and we lift our eyes and our heads out onto the horizon. In my own story, I don't take away that message that things just work out in the end, but the idea that only when all things I had wished had happened, after all the plans that I had made had failed, after I had run out of dreams, was I actually ready to receive what needed to happen next. 2 years prior, 3 years prior, if somebody had said to me, you know what, you're going to end up being the administrator of a church rather than the rector of it, I would have balked and said, that is beneath me. I am meant for greater things. I don't know if I would have said that, but I definitely would have said it. I might have thought it. But I am so grateful for the years that I spent as a church administrator and communicator. I am so much a better priest than I would be otherwise because of those years I spent working in the church, having a real job in the church, not being a priest. But for me, that's what hope is. Hope is not about hoping for things in particular. Hope is the posture we adopt when all the things that we wished for, all the things that we wanted, suddenly aren't available anymore. And how do we then respond? Not just contrasted with that sinking down, cowering down, running away, but also the other thing we're liable to do, which is running headlong, running towards something else, just making more goals, making more dreams, running towards something else. That's how we spend most of our lives, right? Just in the same way that being a perfectionist had served me so well, that's why I hung on to it. We are taught that we should have wishes and we should set goals and we should work towards those goals. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is a perfectly reasonable way to live your life. Except and until our world's end, all that forward movement we were making is reversed. All the goals seem impossible now, and it feels like the heavens are shaking. And that's when mere wishes give way to genuine hope. That instead of running to some other goal, we just stop. And we stand and we raise our heads towards that distant horizon, ready to receive what comes next. In the face of all those signs of the end, hope stands and waits and breathes, open and ready, with confidence that there is, even when it seems like everything has ended, confident that there is something new, ready to be born to us, ready to be born in us. Amen.